everybody, and it's great to be here. Now, you clearly haven't come here to hear me talk, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight into some questions to Ben and Joe, because it's a fascinating subject. And so I'm going to open up just by asking you, we've spoken before, and I know that you're friends, you've been friends for a long time. Can you just talk us through how that happened? Where did you meet, and how did you end up being co-team principals of Team Brady?
Yeah, of course. We met quite a long time ago now at university studying engineering. And while we were there, we decided that we would like to do something together in the future that combines our passions, both through our studies and outside of our studies. And we didn't quite know what that would be, and it took a bit of time for us to find an opportunity, and we went off down separate career paths after studying. I worked in Formula One for 10 years, most recently with Red Bull Racing and Max Verstappen. Ben, he worked for Richard Branson's Virgin Formula E team back in the early days there, and then moved on to McLaren Automotive. And it was while he was at McLaren Automotive that he crossed paths with Roddy Basso, who went on to be the founder of the sport that we now compete in, E1. And yeah, Ben, you saw the concept for E1 at a very early stage, didn't you, as a PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, well, actually, it wasn't even a PowerPoint presentation at that point. It was just a chat between colleagues at McLaren, and Roddy had this seemingly crazy idea at the time of electric powerboat racing, and didn't really think too much of it. And then, as Joe said, we were looking for a project to do together, and we wanted to take that next step in our careers and set something up, ourselves. So it was a long road, not certain as well. There was a lot of uncertainty along the way, and we took a bit of a risk, trying to get the team set up whilst we were still having full-time jobs, and the many online Teams calls, trying to get things moving. I remember Joe, when he was at Formula One races, we'd be on calls at 2 a.m. or something because of the time differences. And so it's great that we were able to eventually put it all together. And it was about 18 months in the making, and then suddenly we were in Jeddah for the first race in January 2024.
Yeah. And before I move on to finding out more about the racing itself and the championship, how did you actually come specifically to be asked to lead Team Brady?
Well, we had spent a year to 18 months working on trying to get a team set up, and kind of in tandem, Tom Brady had been sold on the vision for E1 and what Team Brady could become. So it was a really good fit. We were both passionate about what E1 was all about, and we joined forces to turn Team Brady from just a name at that point into what it is today, a fully fledged racing team.
Yeah. Could you just explain what the E1 World Championship is? I mean, we've talked about it before, so I understand it, you understand it, but it's not necessarily something that makes big headlines. So what is this E1?
Yeah, so I guess it follows in the footsteps of a sister series called Formula E, which some of you may have heard of. That's electric motorsport, car racing. I guess the electric version of Formula One, and it was a similar vision behind E1 in that the marine industry is fair to say it's lagging behind the automotive industry in its move towards electrification and net zero technologies. And so the idea behind E1 was to use sport as a platform, as a showcase, as a proving ground for the tech. As you saw in the video, the boats are on hydrofoils, which is a much more efficient way to move through the water and a much quieter way. And also, electrification technologies in the marine space. So, that's essentially the ethos of E1. In terms of what actually is it, it's at the moment 9 teams. They are all celebrity owned. So the series wanted to get celebrities that have a real passion for sustainable technologies, for the ocean, to get behind teams and to own the teams.
You'll have to give us some names.
Well, obviously, we have Tom Brady for Team Brady, but there's also Rafa Nadal, Will Smith, Virat Kohli, the cricket player. Who else? Who am I missing?
Steve Aoki,
Oh yeah,
DJ.
the DJ. Yeah. So yeah, it's a real mix of personalities and backgrounds. 9 teams, and we race around the world. And yeah, essentially the format is like most racing, but lots of you have qualifying, and then we have heats, and then the finals. So 2 drivers per boat. We have male and female driver pairing for each team. So we have Sam Coleman and Emma Kimiläinen as our pilots, and they take turns jumping in the boat. And as we go through the event, you sort of are going through the heat stages and trying to qualify all the way through to the final, and hopefully win the final.
Thank you. Before I move on to to really drill down into the net zero aspects of the boats, the whole ethos behind the racing, I'm just intrigued to know a bit about Tom Brady. I can't help it, we all get a bit starstruck. And he's, you're working for the GOAT, essentially, aren't you? Greatest of all time, quarterback, NFL, massive name. What's he like as a boss?
He's a really great boss, and the one thing that inspires us most is the fact that he hasn't always been the GOAT. He was quite underrated in his early career, but he just outworked everyone around him to become the superstar he is today, and that's really inspirational for the team when things are not going so well. He's obsessed with high performance, and he's a real details guy. He's always in touch with us on WhatsApp, both on events and away from events, asking questions about things that you maybe wouldn't expect him to be interested in, but he really likes drilling down into every aspect of it, but is in no way a micromanager. He trusts us to make decisions, but supports us in any way that we need him to.
Yeah. Sorry, Stephen, just to jump in there as well.
Yeah.
Tom, when he comes to the races, he just brings this incredible energy that the whole team really feels. I don't think it's any coincidence that the 2 races that Tom came to last year, we happened to win, which was, from our perspective, was big tick in the box, and I couldn't have asked for a better result. And the pilots, Sam and Emma, have said it many times that when Tom's around, he just has this infectious energy, and he just gets everybody pumped up. And I guess it is a little bit kind of American in that style. But when you see documentaries, if anybody's ever watched anything of what Tom was like in his career, in his playing days, he's famous for just geeing everybody up, and it works. And so everybody was just operating at the top, on their A game.
We've watched quite a few documentaries of Tom in his NFL days, and one of the key things he says to all the people around him is, just do your job, which is what we try and do. They did say quite early on that our job was to win, so there was a little bit of pressure there, but we managed to win the first 2 races of last year, and also went on to become the first ever E1 world champions. So we think we ticked that box.
That's fantastic, yeah. I wonder if I could put a word in for him to come along when I'm managing my Sunday football team a couple of times, just to see if that energy can transfer. We've got some big games coming up, so I'm sure he's got a fairly clear diary. So just moving away from Tom specifically, this is net zero. This is what we're all about here, and clearly the team, the racing is about that too. First of all, I'd like to know a bit about how E1 and specifically Tom, Team Brady is shaping the future of marine mobility. You touched on it a bit there. What is it that you're doing about marine mobility, marine ecosystems, things like that, protecting and preserving?
Yeah. I guess to take a little bit of a step back, and just we did touch on it earlier, but just to understand the kind of the why behind why are we doing this, and why did Ben and Joe decide to do this? Because we've come from motorsport, but I think it's fair to say that for a lot of people around our sort of age and all sorts of people, we're becoming much more environmentally conscious and understanding the issues that the planet's facing. And so what E1 is trying to do, for us, it fitted very well with our backgrounds of motorsport, but this desire to try and do something to try and improve the way the world is going with emissions, with certain technologies in the marine industry. And then to bring it back to your question, Stephen, with what exactly is E1 trying to do? As we said earlier, it's the technologies, it's the electrification. So, for example, one of the things that we just didn't have any idea about before starting E1 and getting involved was the impact of noise pollution on marine environments underwater. So most boats in the world are powered by an internal combustion engine, and that releases a lot of noise underwater, which has a huge detrimental impact to the marine environments. With an electric powertrain, it's almost tenfold quieter, the studies that E1 have done themselves with the Racebird, the boat that we race. They've done some studies in certain environments to measure the difference of the noise underwater, and what they've seen is it's a tenfold increase. And that means that the wildlife underwater can actually communicate with each other. And what they found is that when noise levels go beyond a certain point, the wildlife just stop communicating, and even wildlife above the water as well, birds and everything around those locations where people are using boats, they just stop communicating with each other. So that is one aspect. The other is the fact it's obviously electric powertrain, so zero emissions, and reducing the amount of oil that we're using. So again, when we were going through this journey to understand what is E1 and how does it actually help, one of the stats that really stood out for us was 1 litre of oil can contaminate up to 1 million litres of water. So, if you're using an internal combustion engine for your boat and you have a bit of an oil, leak, then that can be, hugely detrimental to the environment.
Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to add on that?
I'll add that alongside the racing itself, there is an initiative called the Blue Impact Championship. So the series have turned action into a competition away from the racing itself. So we ourselves, and along with our partners, collaborate in order to be able to score points for positive impact that we have on the environments that we race in.
Right. How does that work? What sort of things are you doing?
So we are actually going to use this opportunity to talk about the Team Brady Race for Change campaign that we are setting up, and that is a platform that we're using to showcase what our partners are doing, and now's probably a good time to talk about those partners. We have Cambridge Mobile Telematics on board with us at the moment, and they use mobile phones to measure and analyze driving data, which not only makes roads safer, it also decreases the amount of fuel used, so increases the efficiency of drivers on the road. And all of the partners that we get involved, we try and make sure that they do have the same kind of views on sustainability as we do. Oceanar, for example, who produce the teamwear, they make this teamwear from recycled ocean plastic, and they really have ambitious goals when it comes to removing plastic from the oceans and cleaning up the environment. And then Racing Force Group, who they provide our quite specialist racewear, which the pilots use when they're racing the boats, and that's made from nearly 100% recycled materials, which was quite surprising for us, with it being such a niche garment that has to have a lot of fireproof standards and safety standards.
Yeah. I mean, it's clear that you try and think about every aspect of your carbon footprint, in a sense. What about the travel and transportation side of it? Because I know that looking at Formula One and other events, a lot of the sort of worst side of it tends to be through the travel and transportation. Is there anything you guys are doing or your teams are doing to mitigate that at the moment?
Yeah, so Formula One, I'm glad you mentioned that because Formula One fly everything, pretty much, because of the schedule. It's 24 races in a year, so they don't have enough time to send all the equipment, all the cars and everything by ship, which is a much more efficient way to transport things. With E1, everything is transported by shipping, so we don't use we don't fly any of our equipment. It's all shipped. With the team, we try and use public transport as much as possible. We try and cycle places. I mean, for example, today I cycled here, and we just in our individual team we try and do as much as possible. The sport itself is working towards becoming net zero. They're pretty close to doing that already, which is I think a huge testament. There's a huge challenge just trying to start a new global sport, and especially something that is motorsport, and so you do have much more infrastructure around that. And so to be on the road and close to being net zero is fantastic. And then Joe mentions the campaign that we will be launching very soon for the team called Race for Change, and it's an opportunity, it's a platform for both our existing and future partners to collaborate with us. And for example, transportation could be an area for that. And obviously, E1 is trying to highlight sustainability in the marine space. So there's plenty of opportunity for what we can do in the future as well.
Yeah.
The series has also found ways to leave people at home. We have quite a unique remote broadcast setup. So even people such as the commentators that are commentating on the live action in real time, they're based in the UK rather than travelling around the world with us.
Yeah. In terms of the actual specifics of the engines, is there anything, we can get a little bit geeky, I guess, if we go too deep into it in an engineering way, but what is it that differentiates it between previous powerboat series and these ones?
The fact the boats are on hydrofoils and they fly above the water like planes means that they are really efficient, and therefore we can have quite a low powered motor. So we don't use a huge amount of energy for our races. And as Ben mentioned earlier, the races are quite short and sharp. So we can do multiple races on one battery charge. So that efficiency is key, and we are exploring other ways to make the boats even more efficient. And the designers of the boat, Seabird, they are looking at efficient coatings and surface finishes and things like that around the boat to make the energy used even less.
Yeah.
There are other quite clever bits of technology that we're using, and one of them is not actually on the boat itself. It is in the picture that's up here. It's known as a smart mark. These are autonomous buoys. They don't have anchors. They're not damaging the seafloor in any way, but those are used to set out the race course. Those are battery-powered, GPS-located buoys. So really clever bits of kit that we're hoping can be rolled out and used in other applications in the marine space.
They do have a mind of their own sometimes. So they do have a tendency to just drift, and then suddenly the race course has changed and the driver's on the radio saying, what happened to that smart mark? But yeah, apart from that, they're pretty good.
They just lose their concentration a bit, I guess.
Yeah.
But we celebrate the imperfections with the technology as well. A lot of people criticize when they see this new tech and it's not quite perfect yet.
Yeah.
But we're all about identifying the imperfections and hoping to iterate and make it better going forward.
And yeah, as we said earlier, E1 is meant to be a proving ground for new sustainable technologies, and the boats themselves aren't perfect. We've had a number of issues throughout the first sort of 12, 14 months of racing. But the great thing is, as Joe said, you find the issues, you work through them, you figure out the solutions, and then the overall solution is improved and even better. And motorsport has been famous over the decades of being a proving ground for technologies that are then rolled out into other industries, automotive being the obvious case study there. But when you look at what's happening in Formula One now with other technologies that they're implementing onto the car, they're using that as a showcase to then implement those technologies into different industries as well. And that's something that we see for the future of E1. At the moment, all the boats are what we call spec series, so they're all the same for every team. But in the future, they will open up development in certain areas that are relevant to the mission and the ethos of E1.
Yeah, I've just got a couple more questions because I'd like to open up to the audience to ask some things as well. Is the kind of level of power and excitement the same in the e-boat racing as it is in the sort of successor powerboat racing?
It's actually quite a different spectacle. Traditional powerboat racing and petrol-powered powerboats are doing 140 miles an hour, but they're way off in the distance, away from the fans, away from the crowds, and you don't get much interaction with the actual racing. Whereas because these boats are so quiet and they produce so little wake, you can bring all of the racing really close into the crowds. And the previous race that we did, we were in Qatar, racing around the Pearl in Doha, and it's essentially a marina with really calm, pristine water with leisure boats parked up around the edge of the course. But the fact that these boats are so kind to the water, it means that we can come and race right next to boats that are parked up, and all of the crowds can stand and watch what's going on. So it's a very different thing to watch. But we feel it is even more exciting than the previous generation of powerboating.
The speeds, as Joe touched on, the speeds aren't as fast, and I think most people would automatically think that's because they're electric. Actually, it's the foils that are limiting the speed, and the foils reach a certain terminal velocity, as we like to say in engineering speak, where they just suddenly lose lift. They can't take the amount of upwards force, and it just drops off a cliff. And so what we find in E1 at the moment, it's to be fast around the lap, it's all about consistency on the foils. If you go too fast, the boat just suddenly crashes down on the water, and it's quite violent, it's quite noisy as well. So we're trying to keep up on the foils, and in that respect, it's very much like sailing. You know, if you look at America's Cup or Sail GP, it's the same thing, and we're reaching pretty much the same top speed as an America's Cup boat is, and that is because the foil technology at the moment is limiting that top speed. So E1 is very much like it's motorsport meets sailing in that respect. It's quite different to powerboating, but as Joe said, the show is right next to the shore, it's right next to where people are watching, and it's very close, tight racing, so it's exciting.
Okay, so final question really is, do you think the electric car racing and boat racing will become eventually where the audience is, where the activity is, the future of racing?
That's a tricky one to answer.
I'm sorry.
But yeah, there are multiple different potential solutions for the future of motorsport. There is electrification. We may go down the hydrogen route long term, or people talk about keeping internal combustion engines but using sustainable fuels. The truth is, I personally don't know what the future will hold, but at the moment, Formula E and Formula One are coexisting, and they have quite different audiences, but are both achieving great things. And we feel in the powerboat racing scene, we think that we have the potential to go above and beyond what any petrol-powered powerboat racing has done in the past, and we feel like we will be the premier category.
Yeah, to be honest, I think we've already reached that point. Just in terms of the level of the popularity and the viewership, and you know, this is why this series, when they first started, wanted to get celebrities on board that share that vision, just to try and accelerate and propel everything. And I think sort of traditional powerboating it's stuck in the past a little bit, both in terms of the technology and the way in terms of the racing itself. And so I think E1 has just come in and, excuse the pun, but blown it out of the water. And so it's a really exciting space to be in, as a new team and with new partners. And so, yeah, we're looking forward to what comes in the future.
The whole thing sounds great and very exciting, you're right. I'm envious of you both. I wonder if anyone has any questions. This lady down here. I think we've got time for 2, possibly 3.
Hi.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this, so that was amazing. Thank you. And it's also nice to see that as an organisation, you're looking at a lot of companies currently are struggling to see how their supply chain can be more decarbonised, but you're setting the standard straight away for that, like your outfits and things like that. So that's really great to see. But my question is, how do you think this technology, obviously you've got a lot of financial backing with the sort of people involved in this, how do you think that will actually impact the wider maritime transport? Can you see it being used wider in the industry?
Yeah, before getting involved in E1, I wasn't familiar with hydrofoil technology at all, but since doing our research, we've realized that it has been around for a long time, and you can take a traditional boat and you can put hydrofoils on the bottom of it, and you can increase its efficiency massively. But I think the fact that not that many people in the wider world have heard of this technology is what's holding it back. And I think water taxis and pleasure boats and boats that you may just get on in day-to-day life will incorporate this technology and have a really great impact outside of the racing that we're doing.
Yeah, the pleasure boat example is a really good one. It actually makes up quite a significant chunk of the marine space, and in terms of emissions as well. And a lot of what E1 is trying to do, and other people that are doing electrified boats and marine transportation, is trying to shift that mindset. There's quite a rigid mindset at the moment of, boats have to be internal combustion engine because you can't get the power, you can't get the speed, but it's not true. And E1 is proving that. In terms of sort of big marine and shipping and things like that, at the moment, an electric powertrain isn't appropriate for that application. But Joe mentioned hydrogen. That could be a solution. Well, it is a solution. There's companies that are working on that at the moment. So I think E1 is just trying to be that sort of that beacon, if you like, to champion these new technologies and to prove that actually they can be useful.
We have time for one more, but it'll have to be a quick Q&A, this one. In the middle there, Jane. Fabulous.
Hi, thank you. Mike Callis. I hope you will take this as the sincere question that it is. How do you balance the fact that we're talking about sustainability and Tom Brady and cool boats, it's really great, but actually it's Saudi Arabian money that has funded what you're doing, it's the PIF via Aramco. I think that there's a difficult tension there for you guys, so I don't expect a really comprehensive personal answer, but just how do you handle those tensions that must have come into your mind quite a lot in engaging in this?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I think our view with this is that Saudi Arabia clearly want to be making improvements across the board, and sustainability is a key aspect for that. We could all just sit at home and not do anything. But the fact is that they're on board with this vision, and it's a really key case study, I guess, for them, and yeah, as we said earlier, sort of a shining beacon for what their vision is for the future of that country. So it's a positive move in the right direction. That's how we see it. I've got any more to add to that?
Okay.
Yeah, just without the funding that we have available to us, we wouldn't be able to do any of the positive things that we are doing. So that's what we're trying to focus on. And yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you. So next up we have the Future Energy Transition panel. So perhaps you could put your hands together for Joe and Ben.
Thank you.